Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 20 of Sharing My Life. And today I'm going to share with you how I discovered God. A very controversial topic, a very controversial word, and we all have our different views on what God is, and some of us don't even have a view on it. So this is just my view, and it comes from my own lived experience. So just to give you a little bit of a backdrop, I grew up in India, and I grew up in a Catholic, my family was Catholic. And so I went to church every Sunday with my mom and dad. And and by the age of 15, I think I started to question the whole concept of going to church and what God is. And because I never felt any different being in church or not being in church. So I also started to, with a girlfriend, I would skip mass sometimes. Of course, my mom didn't know I used to skip mass. And so when I got married at the age of 23 and came here to Australia. And my husband was not a big churchgoer either. I just stopped going to church. And I think over my 22-year marriage here in Australia, I must have gone to church a maximum of maybe 30 times, and there would have been at times of Christmas or Easter, or if there was a wedding or a funeral, or if my parents came here. So yeah, typically I kind of drifted away from the whole concept of God and church and all of that. And when people used to ask me, are you a practicing Catholic or do you go to church? I would say, my life, how I live my life is my church. And to some extent, that's still very real for me even today. And how I dealt with challenges in my life, because I had many, was by reading lots and lots of self-development books. I had like a whole wall library of self-development books. Self-development books is knowledge from somebody else, right? Somebody's written it, right? So it's their knowledge. So when I look back now, self-development books are basically somebody else's knowledge. And in 2007, I was in a really challenging situation in my life. So clearly, the self-development books weren't the answer to all helping me with my challenges. And I remember sitting on my back deck. I had this beautiful garden that I had created. It was like a picture book, literally. And I had this beautiful deck, Balinese style. And I was sitting on it in a state of probably the lowest point in my life, and also the turning point in my life. I was so low and feeling so alone and so desperate and frustrated because I couldn't affect the situation, my circumstances, with all the knowledge that I had. And I hadn't shared myself with anyone, so I had no support of family or friends because nobody knew what I was dealing with. I kept everything to myself. That's how I coped. And I'm sitting there on my deck, so low and so down. And I don't know from where this came, but I screamed like from my gut. These words came out. I screamed out, I give up. I surrender. Take me and do whatever you want with me. And I didn't even believe in God or anything, but those words just came out of me from I don't know where. Lucky there were no neighbors around, because I'm sure they'd have called the police with the intensity with which I screamed. And then I just burst out crying. It was like the floodgates were open, and I was literally sobbing bitterly for about a good half hour. And when I finished, I was like dripping, face snotty-nosed, and my eyes were swollen. And I got up and I went towards my kitchen to make myself a cup of tea. And I remember feeling this lightness, like I cannot describe. It was a feeling like I had a spring in my step almost. Almost like as if I had taken all my problems that I had, and I've said, here, they're for you, not for me anymore. I can't deal with this. You can have them. And that's pretty much what I did, but I didn't realize I was doing that. And I had this spring in my step. I had my cup of tea, and then I thought, I'm feeling really light. I'm going to go for a walk. And so I went down. We lived quite close to the river. I went for a walk down to a place called Kangaroo Point. And it was summer, as I was walking along the river, there was this warm breeze that was blowing in my face. I can so remember it today because it was so real for me. And I had this feeling like almost I was being carried by something, like supported, and an overwhelming experience of love and peace that overcame me. It's so real for me even today. And that's all I can say, is that I was feeling supported by something, like literally, like something was carrying me. And for me, that was what I call, there was like this force that was carrying me. And I think that that was what I would call God, is that force. And I have no idea what it is. It's like a mystery to me even till today, but that force is what I would call God. And the attributes, the love and the peace that I experience, which is what I would call the attributes of that force, which is God. And in the Catholic religion, we say that Jesus, or we were made in the image of God. And so I think we're not God, but we're made in his image. So we have that love and peace inside of us when we choose it. But we often choose to be right and make somebody else wrong. And so when we choose to be right, we step out of being love and peaceful with the people in our lives. And when I was dealing with the circumstance in my life, I was clearly operating from a place of fear. And when I screamed those words, I was suddenly bounced into by this force, or I surrendered. I thought I was in control of my life, and I surrendered to this force that I call God. I was suddenly lifted to a place of love and peacefulness. Now, that place of love and peacefulness stayed with me, by the way, for a few weeks on, and then the actions that I took from that place of love and peacefulness were totally different to where I was operating from when I was in that place of fear. And I haven't obviously sustained it for 8 years, that overwhelming piece of love and peacefulness. Just ask my kids and they'll tell you that. But there are people, I believe, the greats, Jesus and Buddha and Muhammad, who I believe were human beings that walked this earth and were able to experience that love and peacefulness for a sustained period for their entire lives, became what, they built religions around it, and they're prophets, and we look up to them, and their teachings, for me, point to those attributes of that force, that God, and those attributes are love and peace. And I'm getting a bit overwhelmed here because it's such a big, beautiful topic. But so for me, when I'm in a place of love and peacefulness is when I believe I'm connected to God, or source, or that force, whatever you want to call it, whatever works for you. I'm clearly not God, because if I was God, I would be able to spin the earth around the sun, and I would have the cosmos working, and I would, you look at a flower and you think, wow, what's made that? So there is some force out there, which is what I call God, that same force that created this body. And anyway, so when I know when I have disconnected from God, or that force, is when I'm feeling any other emotion but love and peace. If I'm feeling angry, if I'm feeling fearful, if I'm feeling jealous, if I'm feeling anything else but love and peace, I know I have disconnected from who I really am, which is that Godness, the Godness in me, the attributes that I was made in the liking of that force. It's becoming a bit complicated, but that's the best I can explain it to you. And the access for me to get back to that place of love and peace is via my early morning spiritual practice, which is it's part. I do quite a bit of prayer and meditation and yoga, and also mindfulness through my day, practicing mindfulness, eating slowly, or being with another person, just really being when you're in the present moment, I think is the intersection of that higher power, God, and this is the earthly plane, is when the intersection of the two is where God resides, which is in the present moment. And so when you can actually be with another, or if we could be all the time in the present moment, we would be the equivalent of God. And so I don't think anyone can be all the time in that present moment. But anyway, some of the practices that I do to help me reconnect with my Godness, or the attributes of my Godness, which is love and peace, is meditation and prayer, and spending time with the people in my life that love me and I love. Because when you spend time with people that love you, you experience yourself as love. When you spend time in nature, you experience peace, which is what we are. When we spend time in meditation, you're connecting to yourself. So basically, it could come down to connection as well. That's why I'm such a big community person. I think, we find ourselves and we find our Godness when we connect with people in an authentic way, of course, and we show our vulnerability. And I can just keep going and talking on this topic, but that's my view, and it's only my view. and where I'm, and that force, by the way, for me is a mystery. I had no idea what it is, and I think dwelling in that mystery is where I want to be forever, because and love and peace. Thank you for listening. It's a big topic for me. It was a turning point in my life, and I don't know where I've had the courage to share with you all today on this topic, but it came. I was yesterday in the shower and I said, what shall I talk about today? Because it's episode 20, and I didn't think I would get to episode 20, and these words just literally dropped into my head. How I discovered God, share how I discovered God. And so I'm here sharing that with you. Thank you for listening. And I'm going to say hello to everyone here. Hello, Sylvia and Carlita and Kali and Tareen. Oh my God, Sophia, Sawant, you're my sweetheart. And Julie, Sophia and Moana. It's such a delight to see so many people over here. So thank you for listening. And that's my view on what God is and the attributes of God. And I will see you next week. I have no idea what I'm going to share, but I'll see you next week. I'll see some of you this evening, actually, Carlita and Moana. But yeah, thank you. Bye for now.